And yes, I told to everybody that I put everybody on mute, and you can write something on chat, and in the end, I'll unmute you, and we can discuss, we can ask questions and speak. Okay, so yeah, Jacob, please.
Thank you so much. And the question is really very interesting. Why Japan and the Jews? There have not been so many Jews living in Japan. Definitely, hardly anybody has ever seen a Jew before the 1930s, I would say. And even then, there were very few of them. But the tour today takes us to discover Japan from some unusual perspective. I'd like to point out some of the oddities and the strange things that are very different from whatever we see in other countries, and to tell about a very special Jewish connection, Jewish story. I'll just get the pointer going, sorry. And here we are. So wherever it is that we might be flying from, you guys are on the East Coast. Sometimes you fly directly. Sometimes people connect via the West Coast, and you land in Narita, which is a town a bit outside of Tokyo. And you know by now, Japan is this very, very long chain of islands. Here we see only some of them. Actually, it stretches for almost 1,200 miles north to south on many islands. But we will spend today traveling through the central island, and you see the location on one side, of course, is the Pacific Ocean. On the other side, the Sea of Japan, where Russia is not very far, and Korea. And these are the countries that are the neighbors, the direct, immediate neighbors to Japan. Today, the tour we will take us along a route which starts in Tokyo and concludes in Kyoto. Of course, there is so much more to see, but we will spend time visiting some of the locations along this route as if we were taking a real tour. I love visiting Japan. I don't know that I could live there. There are very strange things happening there, and the way they act and the way they expect other people to act is a bit difficult and definitely different, as I said, from what we're used to, but it's a beautiful place. And I like to visit it on two different seasons of the year. Of course, the fall foliage is so magnificent. It was 2 months ago, and the colors are really mind-boggling. And if you don't visit it on the fall, which is so magnificent, you might want to consider visiting Japan during the sakura. That's what they call the cherry blossom, where the whole country is like burning with the beautiful blossom of the cherries. By the way, they don't really eat cherries there. All of these trees, 64 different varieties, don't really bear fruit which is edible. It's a tiny little dry fruit, just a little skin around the seed of the cherry. But the fact that they have so many varieties means that the blossom lasts more than the otherwise just 1 week. That's how long any flowers lasts. And they make a real holiday out of it. They have a sense of planting the trees. The only reason they planted these trees is for the cherry blossom. The flowers, which will be on the tree for a week, will be reflected in the canals, in the rivers, will decorate the gardens, will decorate the castles, private homes, public areas in the cities, and they really go out to celebrate. They have special dispensation from the boss during that week or a couple of weeks when the cherry is there, in the central parks, in the cities, even in smaller parks. The city will provide this kind of mattresses, this kind of covers to put on the floor. They'll go to the store and get some food, some drinks, and they'll come out of the office to celebrate. And that's very unusual for a nation that works very hard. Hardly anybody leaves the desk at 5 o'clock. The pencil doesn't fall off their hands as it does in some of the countries we know. They'll continue and work, but during that week, they leave in the afternoon to go and celebrate Hanami. They call the celebration of Sakura. Sakura is the blossom. Hanami is the celebration. Tokyo is home to the Imperial Palace. Tokyo has not always been the capital. It's only from the middle of the 19th century that the capital was moved from Kyoto, which has been one for centuries, to Tokyo. And that's when the beautiful Imperial Palace was built, again surrounded by gardens. Many temples existed there in Edo. That was the name of the town before, but new ones were added once it became the capital, and the visit to Japan always revolves somehow around the traditional views of the beautiful extinct volcano, Mount Fuji, as seen from many, many different directions against the backdrop of the skyscrapers. So we have tradition and modernity coexisting in a very, very unusual way. They have a couple places where they let you ascend with the elevator to the 50th floor, 48th floor of various buildings to have a look at the city. And walking in the city, of course, different residential neighborhoods, business district, they don't really have one city center. They have a few locations. It's the largest city in the world and it keeps growing. Yesterday, the Japanese government announced that they will give couples $7,600 per child if they move to the remote areas. But nobody moves. Everybody moves into Tokyo because that's where life is, that's where work is, and having a good time going along these amazing streets. Sometimes you walk in these areas at night, you don't really realize at night. It's lit so beautiful, so beautifully, you think it's like almost daylight. They connect from one place to the other using this amazing rapid train, the bullet train. I'm sure that many of the things I tell you, you know already, you read about it, you've seen movies, TV programs, but I like to relate to some still things that will not come so easily when we talk about the country. Even the train stations, they are so different. The design for the train station is so futuristic. And talking about design, you know, they are one of the cleanest people on earth. Everybody is very clean, but they are particularly clean, and they make such a big thing out of keeping things clean. This is a design of public bathroom. And don't be alarmed, sometimes you go and you see that the walls of the bathrooms are transparent and translucent. It's only when you're in there and you turn the key, only then does it become opaque and people can have their privacy. One of the things that you will notice, and I must admit, I don't know why they don't really have it in many other places. Not only even the public toilet have this expensive Toto seat, sorry for the graphic details, where people can really make themselves comfortable, but look at this amazing baby seat. How often people go into the bathroom with the baby, and now what do? You need to, to do your thing, and you put the baby here, and it's absolutely perfect. And they have it not only in the bathroom, they have it in so many places. Yes, Shana, aren't they cute when you look at these babies? And they're happy sitting there and they keep an eye contact with you. It's not like you have to leave them. And I think this is one of these amazing, brilliant, brilliant ideas that they have. One of the things that I really love is the fact that you are not supposed to smoke literally anywhere, not only in the buildings, walking in the streets, whether they are shopping street, residential street, smoking is strictly forbidden, but for the people who really need to, every few hundred yards, they allocate a special smoking area, and people feel like an outcast. You really feel like you have to punish yourself. You are shunned, you are banished from the public to go into the smoking area to smoke. Talking about public areas, one of the most popular places was the fish market. This is a picture taken in the old fish market that stopped operating a couple years ago, but around it, lots of stores and lots of restaurants still operate. This is already outside the market where people can still come and buy stuff. And that's also where you come for breakfast if you wish, or lunch or something, using the freshest of ingredients. One of the big things that take place in the fish market early morning, now we cannot do it anymore. We used to go there at 4 o'clock in the morning, take the subway, and go to the fish market where they would auction the tuna fish. Look at the price the guy paid for one fish. One fish. And he bids for it, and they raise the price, and he finally offers the price, he wins. That moment, his staff will start calling their customers, whether in the restaurant or the hotel or some small miyazaka, some kind of like a very small pub that can only seat maybe 10, 15 people. And they'll call the regular customers, and the people will immediately make a reservation, and they will come to sample on a tiny little piece of the fish for which they can pay up to $5,000. I'm talking a tiny little piece, but it's the freshness and the quality and the flavor and the texture, a whole science. This is the new location of the fish market. They moved it out of town because it was a bit difficult with all the people who want to come and witness this kind of activity. And the place was crowded and it was old, and they wanted to make it sanitary and clean, so they moved the fish market to a new location. This is where now the auction takes place. They list and they put down all these fish. All these people who come to buy, they have a tiny little piece of metal where they can scoop a tiny little morsel of meat, they taste it, and based on that, they will place their bids for the auction. Some of the beautiful temples that were built there, very modern, very strong structures, but still based on the very same principles as they always did, going through the gates, into the courtyards, and you step from the temples area and not far, you're going to see Omotesando, where you have along one street some of the most unusual buildings, modern architecture at its very best. Mostly these are flagships for some of the biggest names in fashion and design. And again, you go, you take up, let's say here, for example, you take the escalator up, and for 2 minutes almost, you lose your bearings. You don't really know where you are. It's so confusing. And again, not only the cleanliness and the aesthetics, how about, guys, this is the dining area of a McDonald's. Can you imagine? You get your stuff from McDonald's and you sit in this beautiful, beautiful garden to have your lunch. That is another attraction in the city where everybody has to go. This is Shibuya, where there are hundreds of thousands of people an hour, literally crossing. And when they change the light, everybody goes in each and every direction. So it's a sight to see. I like to step up and go to one of the nearby buildings and see all this amazing activity from the top. It's really fantastic. So many people cross at once, and that happens every few minutes as they change the lights. The traffic stops in all directions, so only pedestrians now can cross in each and every direction they wish to go. Takeshita is a very small street, not very long, less than half a mile long, very narrow, but it's the place where everybody comes to see and to be seen, especially younger people offering some unusual shows. So really, other than the tourists and very few other locals, most of the people there are very young. And this is not Halloween, this is not Purim. They really get dressed that way to go into town, to go out and about. And they actually train themselves to stand with a little crooked way, using all these Gothic and other modern appearances with their hair pieces and whatever, very unusual dresses. And that's what they dressed up for. And again, it's not a holiday. It's like they need to be different. They need to make a statement and look at the amazing outfit you're going to see on the street going there. I don't like, for example, this lady and some of the others, they learn to stand with their feet like facing, the toes face each other, and it looks like crooked. And like if we had a child like that, we would like to straighten his legs. No, they do it deliberately. Some of them wear their kimonos. These are not real kimonos. These are rented to the tourists. So sometimes when I visit it and I have some people in the group who are interested. So you rent it for very little money, just a few dollars. You rent it for a few hours and you walk around. They help you put your hair together, put some flowers or something in your hair, and you walk around. This is an unusual phenomena, a store dedicated only to wrapping material. They are very big on giving gifts. By the way, in our society, we expect a Christmas bonus or New Year's bonus or whatever from the boss. In Japan, they don't expect a gift from the boss. They buy an expensive gift for the boss to say thank you for hiring them, for employing them, for keeping them in business. And then they spend the longest time searching for the wrapping material and they'll wrap it to be absolutely gorgeous. They pay attention to aesthetics, even look how they decorate the ice cream. What you wanted? You wanted a little vanilla or strawberry ice cream. Look how much went into it, decorating it. How much goes into decorating your cappuccino to make it very, very unusual and very nice looking. One of the big things for the last few decades is crepe. They got so enthusiastic with French crepes that come in every form and shape with all kinds of fillings from fruits and vegetables. By the way, we're not looking at real crepes. In order for you to be able to order, they created this kind of crepes out of plastic and they display it in the window. What you see is what you'll get, identical. Everything they will offer, that will be what you will actually be served, like you have seen it in their windows. Now, time maybe to sit for a cup of coffee. Why should it be just a coffee shop or a tea house? How about you go and have the coffee in a coffee shop which has porcupines? Porcupines sit on your lap, sit on the table, sit next to your teacup. And if you don't care for porcupines, how about having coffee in a cat coffee shop where many cats are all over the place, all over you, and they're friendly. And some people find the cats much more interesting than the coffee or tea they're having. And if cats are not your line, when was the last time you had coffee with owls? You sit with owls in the coffee shops and you can touch them, you can pet them. And for the daring one, how about a coffee shop which has snakes all over the place? And I'm not talking tiny little ones, I'm talking real big ones. And again, you can lift them, they're harmless, and you can pet them and play with them, and of course, take your pictures. Now, this is very, very Japanese. I cannot imagine any other society doing it. They love pets, many of them, but some of them, with the kind of work hours they put in, they will not have the time to take the pets out. So they buy a toy pet, but they leave the pet alone, and the toy is at home all alone for a long time. So every few days, they'll take it out to a coffee shop where your pet toy can play with other people's pet toys. How about that? So the toy will not be bored to death at home all the time. Look at the way the waitresses show up. Every coffee shop has a theme. Some of them, they will look, the waitresses, the wait staff will look like nurses, or they will look like figures from the different TV shows. They'll pop out of the cake in all kinds of strange way. And you can also participate in it. Let's go into a shop where you can rent a suit. You can be a Superman or a Batman and drive these kind of cars around town where the traffic is so chaotic and congested, they still allow you to sit in these cars and drive around town wearing all kinds of strange outfits. Loneliness, I'm afraid, is a very big thing, and some people, either because they have difficulties communicating or they're too busy really to develop relationship. And guess what they do? They marry an artificial bride. They have this unique creature, which is their companion. It learns to talk to them, to recognize not only their voice and intonation, conduct conversation, and this guy proudly presents that is his spouse. It's not only like we say to him, hey Siri, or hey Alexa, play this song or the other. These are their wives. These are their spouses. My boss even triggered one of the Siri. I said, "Hey Siri," and the phone started talking back to me. Sorry about that. So I find this so unusual. When it comes to desserts, I'm afraid that's one thing that I don't get too crazy about. All the desserts are made out of all kinds of beans. They are beautiful looking, but I personally don't care for them. What I do get excited, look at this competition. They bring babies who are 6 months old. They bring them to a special place called sumo stables. That's where the big burly guys, the sumo warriors, hold the babies in their hands. The first baby that starts crying, because they are scary when you think about it, 6 months old. The first baby that will start crying, he will be blessed. He will have a special blessing. It means that he will be very lucky in life, and every parent wishes their babies to be the first ones to start crying when they see the sumo warriors. Now that's a new thing in Japan. Lady sumo warrior, something that was inconceivable just a few years ago, and now is becoming very, very popular. Lots of younger ladies will practice it, will adapt to the very, very strict and special rules of the sumo fighting. Very, very special thing. Now is another Japanese thing. We have it in other places, but this is unreal how many people go there. Crying therapy. They think that you are pressed, that you are under all kind of pressure from all reasons. And one way to relieve it, you go to a place and you sit and listen to stories that will make you cry. And they pay money to go and sit and have people make them cry. And you should see them. They hear all kinds of sad stories, and the guy, of course, or the lady telling the story, do it in a very dramatic way. Until they cry, they don't leave the place. They cry a while, and then they can proceed. And then they talk to them to vent it off, to see what's the story, what's the situation. I think we have some, I see the comments. Yes, it is very, very unusual. You're absolutely right. Now, this is a very special thing. I think that if you will sit in your offices in New York and New Jersey, and all of a sudden you catch a nap, I don't think your boss is going to like it. Is that what I'm paying you for, to sleep on the job? In Japan, the boss encourages you. It's called inemuri. Inemuri, the boss says, go and take a rest. Close your eyes, sleep for 20, 25 minutes. They believe that you get a second wind and you will be much more fresh and active and full of energy after you coat. And guess what? People who do it now in other countries, I didn't hear much about it in the United States yet, but I will not be surprised that it will be more and more soon. And that is something fantastic. You work very hard and then you had lunch, and after lunch you feel a little, for a nap or something. And the boss says, go ahead, inemuri time, rest for 20 minutes, and then you'll be fresh and full of energy to continue with your job later on. Now, this is something that I get very, very wild about. We would pay fortune, right, to take the kid to have their teeth straightened. This girl had perfectly fine teeth, but she thinks it's cute to have these teeth look the way they are. They pay thousands of dollars to go and have the teeth crooked. Can you imagine? And she'll keep it that way for a couple of years. And then she'll go to the doctor, to the dentist, and she will have them straightened again. Talking about kids, this is something I wish we would have in many other places. Class is over. Before they leave school, the kids clean the classroom. It doesn't mean that they won't have a professional cleaner later on come and do a good job. But I think it's so fascinating that the kids learn to be responsible, to clean the classroom and put everything in order, leave it spick and span after the school is over. I am fascinated with the traditional architecture, fascinated with the modern architecture, especially when it comes to libraries and places which are supposed to bring the lights in. Because there is no room for anything there, and because they can pay, are you listening? This watermelon, can you imagine how much it costs? Even if it was a round one, it will be $110, $115 per watermelon. $100 to pay for a watermelon. And in order for it to travel and to last and to be displayed nicely, look how they grow the watermelon. Most of it, by the way, you will not believe it, comes from my country. Lots of fruits and vegetables are sent to Japan from Israel, tiny little Israel, from the desert, and we send lots and lots of fruits and vegetables to them. Because there is no room so much, and because sometimes you think the day is over, all right, it's 7 o'clock, let's go home, 8 o'clock. The boss says, no, tonight we're not going home, we're going out for a drink. And there is no way you can say no. And you must join them, and you go and you sit in the bar and you drink and you sing karaoke, whatever. And then it's midnight or something. You are not going to go home. It's going to take you an hour and a half or even sometimes 2 hours to get home. And tomorrow morning, you'll have to leave early morning. So you go to sleep in these capsule hotels. Each one of these doors is a capsule where they will go inside. They have a shared communal bathroom and showers at the corner of the hotel. And everybody can close the curtain, like the shutter. Inside, they have the bed and they have television and there is internet. And everybody can make themselves comfortable, and that's how many people spend the night in the capsule hotel. You walk in the street, and let's say you need tissues. So they don't really sell tissues, but along the street, surely you will find somebody offering you free of charge tissues because they bear the name and the logo of whatever commercial entity, and that's how the companies advertise themselves, by offering free tissues. You don't really buy many things in many of the stores. They have convenience stores and supermarkets, of course, but a lot is being sold through the vending machines, not only soft drinks, cold drinks, but also hot drinks. You can have your coffee or hot chocolate or tea, many different varieties of tea, and the can comes very hot from the vending machine. You want to go to a place and to find out their opening time. So they don't use 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. So let's say this place is open from 8 o'clock in the evening till 1 o'clock at night. So they use the hour 25 or 26. 26 denotes 2 o'clock in the morning. And look at the beautiful gardens and the beautiful walkway. The landscaping is mind-boggling with no special reason. Some walking from one place to the other. Look at what they have done with the gorgeous flowers. One of the reasons I said I'm not sure I could live there is the way they are so structured. They are so restricted in so many ways. For example, to line up to go into the bank or into some office or something, you have to stand in line and please stand in 2 rows. And they actually look at you if you step a little to the side or you stand on your own. No. And the story of the seat for the babies is also in different public areas. You go to the bank, to the ATM, so to fumble for your card, whatever, you find it there as well. That's how they package some of their snacks. They wrap it, the rice inside has whatever in it, and they wrap it in weeds. And these are the small the small eateries. As I said, they have maybe 5 or 6 chairs, some of them, and that's it. It doesn't have more than that, but there are many of them, and people sit for a short while, and then some other clients will come. I mentioned the fact that everything you want to order, even if you don't read the language, you can point to the sample. So they have a whole industry producing the sample of the food. This is all made out of plastic. You must have seen it also in the United States in some Oriental restaurants, but over there it's every other corner. And everything is plastic, and that's what you'll get. Exactly what you see here is what's going to be on the plate. Even the fresh sushi and sashimi also made, everything is made out of plastic. And it's so amazing. First of all, it looks so appetitlich, right? It gives you good appetite. You want a sample on it. It looks colorful and beautiful, and it looks fresh and interesting. Look at that. All of that is made of plastic. Now, talking about innovation. Some dishes you want to eat when they're chilled. So they created these balls made of ice, and they put this dish into the ice so you'll have it chilled and nice the way you like it. On the other hand, you like ramen. Everybody, I think, knows ramen, their soup with the noodles. Some people like it so much, they like to bathe in it. So you go to a bathhouse where in the pool, they have ramen soup. You're not supposed to eat it, but they like to be in it. They like the smell, they like the heat, they like the feeling, they play with the noodles. Other places offer you baths with wine. Some of the wineries have a swimming pool where instead of water, there is wine. Others have instead of wine or ramen, they have tea. And that's very popular to go and swim in a bathtub, which offers you the tea. Again, if you don't go there to drink the tea, but you bathe in it and you bask in it. How about this guy? He's in Shibuya, the same place we saw earlier, the crossing. Will you marry me? And guess what? He gets proposals. We know Kit Kat, we know snacks. Look at so many varieties of Kit Kat, very popular as a Western snack, chocolate and wafer, and they come, look at so many varieties, and many of them come with the tea or even wasabi. You know wasabi, it's like the hot horseradish, like rain, you call it. Can you imagine the Kit Kat chocolate with it? Now, that's very strange. That's what they do for Christmas night. They are not all Christians, but they like to celebrate whatever holidays they can. And what do you do on Christmas? You book it a year in advance almost. You go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's a very popular pastime to celebrate the holidays. On a more serious note, you walk around the city and you see on the windows, on some of the windows, you see this red triangle. In a country which is very susceptible to earthquakes, lots of tectonic movements, they have on one window, they have this red triangle, and that tells the people inside the building and outside the building, if the firemen have to come and rescue them, that's the window they should be nearby. So you have it in offices and in residential areas. So they know that will be the safest place in the house to run to. And for people who come to rescue, this is where they come to rescue them from. And that's another Japanese. I think he could do very well also in New York. He will rent himself out for under $100 an hour, and he makes a very nice living. You come and you rent him. You don't have to go any special place with him, just talk and eat and drink with him. And that's how he makes a very nice living. Can you imagine? They have a big thing with the cats, we already know. They talk about a cat who helped save a place from a disaster coming in some of their mythologies. And they have the temple dedicated to the cat, and everybody comes and brings a cat. And by now you stop counting how many cats have gathered there, and they add shelves to put the cats. And if you really want to, there is a whole island that has nothing but cats, and people take the boat to feed the cats and play with them. There is another island where you go and play with the rabbits. How about that? A rabbit island. You take again the ferry, and there is nothing there but the many rabbits who multiply and breed non-stop over there. The big gate before the staircase is Tori. Tori is the gate that denotes the passage from the mundane, the ordinary, the secular, to the sacred. And going up steps is representing also spiritual uplifting. You leave the mundane, the daily behind you, and you go to seek solace and have prayers. So you will see this phenomena in many, many of the temples. The Tori and then the steps. Positioning the temples and the pagodas and the shrines is a big thing, again, with their very special sense of aesthetics and to create a dramatic scenery, in this case, next to the waterfall. Leaving the town, we drive to the open-air museum in Hakone. Hakone is in an area which has many, many hot springs. It's a very popular mountain resort where people will come in the summertime because they will hike and ride bikes and ride horses, and in the winter because they will sit in the hot tubs in the hot springs. And beautiful, beautiful statues by some of them renowned artists, Henry Moore and Rodin and many others, and some local artists who create amazing things. These artists, for example, she is married to a Canadian guy. She lives between Tokyo and Toronto, and she knits, she does knitting of these huge pieces of art. Look at that. And the children can hang down from these items or climb the walls. Very, very unusual museum, which I like very much. This is Karel Milles, the Swedish artist, who is very dramatic in what he does, like a man on the hand of God, raising his head up with the question mark. And the Japanese are fascinated with these notions. Even in the museum, there is a hot spring, and you are welcome after you walked for a while to sit down, take your shoes off, and put your feet into the hot water. And then they have in the side, they have a small box. You put like $1, and you take out a bag with fresh, clean towels to wipe your feet before you put your shoes on. Some of the hot springs, the people share with the monkeys. This is in the Japanese Alps there, where you sit in the water and all of a sudden of course, it's snowing and cold, and the monkeys want to sit in the hot water and they join you there. This is the story of the hot tubs, which is everywhere, the onsen. We as strangers, as foreigners, we are not welcome into many of the onsens because somehow we don't seem to be clean enough for them. They don't want us. They don't want even Japanese people with tattoos. You are not supposed to go with tattoo to go into, because you did something terrible to your person if you had a tattoo done to you. They go to the onsen when they have already cleaned themselves and scrubbed and rubbed and shampooed and everything. They go totally clean to enjoy the experience of the water. This town will only let people from that town go into the many tubs which are there. Now that is a Japanese story. Here is this tiny little town with the railway going there, and there are not too many people going. Everybody leaves the small towns, and they want to take this train going there out of commission because they cannot make any living. Somebody has a great idea. There was a cat in the station where everybody knew, everybody would come, bring them little food or something. And somebody had the idea to make this cat the station master. They put the sign, they put the hat that they created, and all of a sudden, there are thousands and thousands of people. It's one of the most lucrative, profitable railroad lines. People come to see the cat. Tama, the cat, which is a train station manager. Unreal. Look at that. Only in Japan. I think only in Japan. I don't see it happening in many other places. So even the train is named after her, and the train is decorated, you see, with the images of Tama. But we take now the rapid train and we cross from one town to the other using these amazing, amazing train, which are so comfortable, equipped with every possible amenity and comfort, and recline this way and the other, and there is internet and there is light and there is heating in the seat. And what freaks me out is the attendants, the people who work on the train. Each time they go into the train, like everywhere they go, they bow, they leave the train, they turn around, they bow. Even if nobody sees them, you sit with your back to them, they'll still bow before leaving the car. They've carried cleaning and turnaround time into a masterpiece. It takes them less than 2 minutes and 17 seconds to have the whole train clean, sanitized, and ready for the next ones. And guess what you are coming into? This is, I think, one of the most amazing structures anywhere. This is the Kyoto railway station, a most unusual building, huge open space with escalators, with eateries, with coffee shops, with rooms for concerts and choirs who come to perform there, an entrance from this station into the department stores. And you move a few blocks away and you go to Gion. You go to the traditional quarters with the wooden houses And lots of the geisha houses are there. Yes, there are still geishas and geikos who are still there entertaining people in their very, very special traditional ways. This is a Chinese tourist dressing up. The Japanese lady will never pose like that, will never smile like that. But tourists, as I said, can rent these costumes. One of the popular things to visit is the Golden Pavilion, the Golden Temple in Kyoto. Look at the beautiful dramatic setup of the rockeries and the trees that are planted. So they will always be special, whether it's cherry blossom or the fall foliage or just like that. And there is another place to walk there in Kyoto, which is the bamboo forest and the bridges. Hardly ever do you see a Japanese park or garden, whether it's at home or in public, that doesn't have uh, the bridges. Crossing the bridge is making a resolution, making a decision. It's a whole philosophical thing. We just cross from one side to the other using the bridge. What on earth? No, for the Japanese, it's a very special place. Like entering one of the temples, you go through these long lanes of tories, of these gates to reach it. And that's quintessential Japanese. Here we come to a rock garden. You come inside and I ask you, how many rocks do you see here? And you count 1, 2, 3, 14 rocks. Let's move to the other side. All of a sudden we see new rocks. We count again, there are 14. But we don't see the first ones we saw. And that is Zen Buddhism if you ever had one. Sometimes we look at something and we are sure that's what we see, that's what it is. No, the Japanese says, no, there could be something else that we don't see. So we have to open our mind and open our heads to consider that there could be something else there. So I love this statue very, very much. This is the castle where the shogun used to reside, beautifully decorated. And that's one of the street markets in town where people, locals and tourists come to buy for food. On the way, I like to stop at this museum of Kubota. He took the concept of kimono not to be worn, but as a medium for his art, creating a most unusual tie and dye technique, creating some of the most beautiful works of art. All of them almost revolve around Mount Fuji, whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter. So this is a very special place I like to visit. I come back at night and I go into most unusual place. It is a church. Christian people who were led by this gentleman, Otsuki Takeji. He was a chaplain in the Japanese army in China in the 1930s. And in 1937, he had a vision. God told him he's going to build a Jewish state for the Jews in the land of Israel. He's never seen a Jew. He knew nothing about the land of Israel. But moved with this idea, he started a movement which now has tens of thousands, subsequently hundreds of thousands of followers. And they have a place where everything is written in Hebrew. And they have a choir who sings Hebrew songs. And you can imagine there is not a dry eye in the house. They have a special guest house where all Israelis are welcome to come and spend 3 days free of charge, including breakfast, just because they love Israel. I'll send Yigal the link and he will forward it to you to listen to some of these amazing singing in Hebrew by these Japanese people. Very, very moving experience. Another interesting group with special relations to the Jews are the Makuya. They visit Israel very, very often, and they built a special garden in the kibbutz Hefziba, where you come and visit a biblical garden designed in a Chinese style. So there is a special bond, special relationship. It's a beautiful Japanese garden in the Valley of Jezreel in Israel. And they have a choir also, and the highlight of their visit, they say the highlight of their life, they stand around the tomb of Herzl in Jerusalem and they sing Hatikva. That is such an unusual experience. Born in the country you know very well, born in Russia at the Tsar time, of course, Joseph Trumpeldor, who lost his arm in the battle with the Russian army, was captured and went sent to a Russian prisoner of wars camp in Japan. But he organized a Jewish group. Look at the names. So this is Bnei Zion, Shvuim beJapan, Sons of Zion, captivity in Japan. They organized cultural activities, lectures. They published a newsletter in Yiddish. And this is, can you imagine, in Japan, 1914. They were given the ability to send the mail and to receive the mail. And here is a picture showing us all of these Jewish soldiers and officers, all of them from Russia, who spoke Yiddish as a matter of making a point of it in captivity. Joseph Trumpeldor, you might know, ended up coming to Israel, and he was killed in Tel Chai, where he is buried with the other defender of this location up in the Galilee. This is the roaring lion, which is very, very famous in Israel. Every child, I remember in this child, we had to do it on parchment paper to draw the roaring lion. Now, that's Japanese. Here is fish. And this fish is a delicious one. They love it, but it has a problem. It protects itself, A, by blowing himself up. That's why you call it a blowfish. And it's very poisonous. But they like to eat it. So they train very carefully, and there are only so many chefs who are licensed and insured to serve pieces of this fish in the restaurant where people will pay fortune. He pays fortune in insurance, and they pay fortune to eat it. Now, this is the only fish that changes the surroundings. Look, he creates works of art on the bottom of the sea or the riverbed where he lives. Look at what he creates to impress the female. Why did I tell you about the fish? The Japanese in the 1930s were not such a developed nation as they were later on. And they want to develop their country to look like the big European superpowers. They get the media from Europe, so they look at, okay, the British, the French, but they're especially fascinated by the German media, who talks about a very special kind of people who are very talented and very gifted, who can control and contribute to develop the economy on one hand. On the other hand, in the same sentence, there are vermins, there are subhumans, Untermensch, and if you want to be free, get rid of the Jews. And somebody in Japan has an idea. Why don't we import tens of thousands of Jews to help us build the economy, but we will be careful not to let them take over our economy and our life. And he compiled a plan called the Fugu plan. Fugu is the name in Japanese of the blowfish. How to import the Jews into Japan to help Japan build an economy. A crazy idea, right? Of course, it did not happen, but it was used by a very, very clever Japanese diplomat, born January 1st, 1900. Very easy to remember the days. He wanted to be a diplomat. His father wanted him to be a doctor. He failed deliberately the exams, became a diplomat, and now, before Operation Barbarossa, before what you call the Great Patriotic War, he is sent to Kaunas. Kaunas is the capital of Lithuania, a country that was born just a few years earlier, following World War I and the collapse of the Tsar Empire. Vilnius, which today is the capital of Lithuania, at that time was occupied by Poland, was part of Poland with a very large Polish-speaking population. He is stationed now in Kaunas, and actually he is spying for the Japanese. They did not get yet into the war. That's before Pearl Harbor. And he's spying what happens between Germany and Russia in that area. Over there, he meets another very special person. This is Jan Zwartendijk. He was a Dutch director of the company Philips, you know, the ones who make radio and tape recorders and whatever. And he sees the Jews who are fleeing from the Nazis into Lithuania, but they cannot go anywhere. And he has a brilliant, brilliant idea. He knows that if you tell you are going to visit the Dutch colonies in the Caribbean Sea, Aruba, Curacao, you don't need a visa. He travels from Kaunas to Riga, that's where the Dutch embassy is, and he convinces the Dutch ambassador to make him a consul. And he now is going to tell people that if they travel here to Curacao, you see, off the shores of Colombia or Aruba, you don't need a visa. And he starts issuing these transit visas, saying that the gentleman was seen to travel to Curacao, and with that permit, now they can go to the Japanese diplomat. This was the first lady who came to the Japanese diplomat. This is the gentleman, Chiyune Sugihara. This gentleman sees the plight of the Jews and he writes to the Japanese government saying, hey, we have to help these people somehow. I want to give them transit visa. And they said no. He writes again and they say no. And he spent the sleepless night and he says, if I obey my country, I betray my God. Consulting with his wife, he takes the decision and he starts issuing these visas to these people who come and they seek the way to exit from there. This is the house where he lived on the second floor, and below was the consulate in the lower floor. He lived here with Yokiko, his wife, and his children. Yokiko's sister came to help them. And this is the office where Sugihara issues thousands and thousands of visas in the few days he has left before he must leave. This is the picture of the Jews lining up outside the consulate, waiting for him to issue the visas. And this is one of the visas with his signature, with his stamp. He prepared a special stamp. And this gentleman has saved the life with these visas to life. He saved the life of nearly 6,000 people. Their descendants now are 50,000 people. They used to meet every few years. Now they meet every 5 years. His son is still around and he joins. His son studied in Israel, speaks perfect Hebrew. And inside the consulate, we have a museum. So look at what they did. From Kaunas, they traveled to Moscow. Once they had the transit visa, there was no problem. They boarded the Trans-Siberian train, 7 days by Irkutsk, all the way Khabarovsk. They came to Vladivostok. From Vladivostok, they could cross into Japan. And they started in that building now. There is a special foundation that unites many diplomats who helped people in certain conditions. I now travel to Japan. I go to the town where his house was, and that's the museum. This is the president of Lithuania honoring Sugihara outside the hotel. He had to close the consulate. Before he could flee, he had to spend one night in a hotel, and they built a memorial there. This is the tree he planted in Yad Vashem, the Holocaust memorial in Jerusalem. This is his son next to one of the many streets all over Israel which carry his name, Chiyune Sugihara, the righteous among the nations. This is the monument outside the hotel. This is the director of the museum. Unfortunately, he passed away, Shimon. And when he died, Sugihara's son said, please, 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 I know you very, very quickly. Please wait for me. And he came to the funeral. And I want to tell you, it was one of the most moving and exciting moments when he came to the funeral. This is one of Sugihara's son with the son of Jan Zwartendijk, the two diplomats who helped save all these people. And this is what he wrote. So interesting, right? Such interesting exclamation. And moved by these ideas, that's what motivated him to issue these visas. One of the visas, by the way, was issued to Zerach Varaftik, who became a member of the Israeli Knesset, and he was the Minister of Religious Affairs. They're an Orthodox guy. And this is him meeting with Sugihara when Sugihara came to visit Jerusalem. So the man whom he rescued is welcoming him in the Knesset in Israel. I love visiting the museum in Kaunas, and I love the idea that he managed to save the entire Mir Yeshiva. Unfortunately, at that time, Japan is already at war by the time the Jews got there, and Japan occupies China. So they didn't keep too many Jews in Japan. They put them on another boat, sent them from Tsuruga, from the place they came to Kobe, from Kobe to Shanghai, where 23,000 Jews were incarcerated in the ghetto in Shanghai. And the entire Mir Yeshiva people were kept there outside of the ghetto, thanks to the generosity of some of the wealthy Jews who lived in Shanghai. They were all from Baghdad, they were Iraqi Jews. So these are the routes which they have taken. And I mentioned Vladivostok, and I have to show you, this is the emperor of Japan visiting the site honoring Sugihara. When Sugihara was discovered, what he did, they revoked all of his titles, he lost his pension, he lost everything he did, he was despised, and he had to resort to travel as a salesman, selling cheap trinkets in Siberia. And then an Israeli survivor discovered him, and all of a sudden, everybody celebrates. Look, this is the emperor and the empress of Japan paying tribute to him. So this is the town of Gifu. That's where we come to visit the Sugihara Museum and tell his amazing story. Inside the museum, the bells play very special chimes as the wind blows, and when the wind blows through these pipes, they also make a very special sound. Guess what? Not only he is honored in Japan, Liberia, Israel, all over the world, the Russian Orthodox Church made him a saint. Look at that. He is a saint for having saved the Jews. Is that an unbelievable story? This is his image outside a Starbucks coffee shop in Chicago. This is him and Yokiko meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Shamir. And this is his son standing next to the tree planted in Yad Vashem. Yokiko published this book, Visas for Life. You can order it, and it's fascinating to read. Air Perception. Nobody knows him, but I must talk about him. This is Saburo Nei. Okay, they got to Vladivostok. Now they have to get to Japan. The transit visa was very nice to leave Lithuania, but how are they going to get from Vladivostok to Tsuruga, to the port in Japan? So this young Japanese diplomat found compassion in him, and he started issuing the visas to let these people get on the boat and get to Japan. And look at that, the title of the article from the Jerusalem Post, the evidence of second Japanese Schindler. Not only Sugihara, but also Saburo Nei. There were others, very special people. These are the Jews who arrived. This is the port of Tsuruga, you see? They sailed from Vladivostok to Tsuruga, subsequently to Kobe, and from Kobe, many of them were shipped to China. This is a museum in Tsuruga, which I like to visit, to pay respect to Nei and the other people who helped them move and survive. And that is yet another amazing place. He was the military attaché in Moscow. So people not from Sugihara, even people, Jews who managed somehow to get to Moscow from Poland, from other parts of Europe, he issued visas and he led them. This is a visa issued by him. She was one of the first ladies, Richelle Kotler Igal. See if there is any relation. Did you hear about this lady, Richelle Kotler? She was given one of the visas. Go ahead. Unmute.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
don't know her, but it's a very, but it's extremely interesting, yeah.
Fascinating. I find it fascinating. She was the first one to be given a visa. And the ones who did stay in Tokyo, all of a sudden, there is this Japanese man who never knew about any of it, who took such compassion. He started going from one house to the other to collect food for the refugees. He converted to Judaism. He moved to Israel, subsequently went to the United States, Kotsuji, and an amazing, amazing person who helped set up and help the Jews in Japan during the war before they could leave and go on. Before I conclude, I want to tell you about this young man, a Japanese who studied many languages, fluent in over 30 languages, and he wanted to study the language of the Jews, the Jewish language. So he didn't know that it's Hebrew. So he looked to study Jewish, and guess what he studied? He studied Yiddish. And he is now one of the top Yiddishists in the world. He's the head of the Yiddish department in the Tel Aviv University. How about that? A Japanese guy who has been teaching Yiddish. And they have in Japan, Japan Yiddish Club. They publish newsletters and magazines and literature and so many different publications about the connection, the special connection between the Jews and the Japanese. I'm sorry I took a little longer than I intended. It's a little over an hour. I hope I did not keep you too busy, but I wanted to share with you what I find fascinating, the Japanese people and the very unusual and special relations and those amazing anecdotes about these wonderful people who helped save Jewish life during the Holocaust.
Jacob, thank you so much. Toda raba. Большое спасибо. It was
Пожалуйста.
it was really amazing story. It was a really amazing trip to Japan and absolutely fabulous Jewish stories. So thank you. We appreciate it because you were our guide, and me personally, I'm very impressed. And who knows, maybe we will arrange in the future a trip to Jewish Japan.
Let's go.
Yeah.
With pleasure.
Guys, so again, here in chat, I put the link on donation, Kajaka donation, and I would very much appreciate it if you can pay what you wish, and we can continue our programs. And before that, we will start the questions and answers, and I'll unmute and you will be able to unmute yourself. I just want to announce our next meeting. It will be my presentation in Russian on Tuesday, February 14 at 7:30. And our topic will be a historical topic, Jewish pirates and slave traders in Jewish history. So we will go to Caribbeans. Okay, so now I will, so you can unmute yourself and ask questions to Jacob.
I would